Good afternoon. I'm Ken Kirschenbaum from Kirschenbaum and Kirschenbaum. Thank you for joining us for today's presentation, which is going to be by Miles Fawcett from Fieldhub, one of the preeminent software companies servicing the alarm security industry. And Miles is going to take you through all the intricacies of his software and why you should be using it. And then he's going to invite you to the ISC show to spend some time with him there at his booth and at his hospitality room, where you can go and have some high-priced scotch, I assume, right, Miles? But we'll see about that. Anyway, everybody, thanks again, and I'm going to turn it over to Miles right now for his presentation. Miles, it's all yours. Oh,
Thank
wait,
you, Ken.
one more announcement. If you have questions, please write them in on the questions feature on the software, on this webinar program, and I'll read them to Miles either at the end, or if appropriate, I'll interrupt him during his examination. Okay, thanks.
Great, Ken. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here for this. Many of you I think I've met and talked to over the years, and many more we're looking forward to meeting, hopefully at ISC West coming up in a couple of weeks. I'm going to be presenting Fieldhub. We're an all-in-one software platform built specifically for the security industry. I'll start with an introduction of myself. I'm Miles Fawcett, a founder and CEO. I started my career in software development, so I have a couple decades of experience in web application development and in software development. I started a security integration company in 2008 called Urban Alarm in Washington, D.C., and grew that doing commercial and residential security and fire. Myself, I'm a master electrician, and grew Urban Alarm for about a decade. Very early in that process, we recognized a need for a modern all-in-one software application that was going to address the specific needs of a security and fire integrator. So actually started building Fieldhub around 2010. So we've been at it for a while. However, we did not launch it beyond Urban Alarm until after I sold Urban Alarm in 2017, and then we launched Fieldhub as a separate business in 2019. Really, the product came to market in 2021 and have been operating since then. So some of my background in the security industry, working on commercial projects. One of the, I'm going to rearrange my screen here, hold on a moment. So a really nice and exciting opportunity to win some Sammy Awards along the way. And then here are actually some very early screenshots of Fieldhub dashboards when Fieldhub was just being used by Urban Alarm. So now we've grown and our team continues to grow. Our core team is around 30 people. And why did we decide to create Fieldhub? So we're frustrated by a lot of the fragmentation, having to have one system for GL accounting, maybe another system for inventory to really do it right, and then something else for recurring billing, and then also tying into central station. So there's a lot of data fragmentation. Really wanted that unified process from the time really entering an opportunity and a contact once, and then that stays in the system and we don't have to enter it in again. We do proposals, manage a project, manage billing. Really strong recurring billing, proration, deferred revenue recognition. This was a really critical piece of why we built Fieldhub, because as I think a lot of you know, that's lacking in a lot of systems. Really to do inventory right. I think certainly we experienced it that inventory is just a heavy lift. It's a challenge, but there's really no good way to get good job costing without doing it. And so implementing inventory in a way that I'll talk about more about that really supported the staff, simplified the process, but captured the movements of material and the job costing And then that was really optimized for field services and with a good, strong field service mobile application. So I'm going to go through some slides, jump into a couple live demos, a lot to cover, and want to make sure we have some time for questions. So the deck is helpful in kind of moving through that, but I know everybody wants to see some live demos, so I'll also jump into a couple areas that we'll do live. So Fieldhub is from the beginning a CRM. So we have a lead, we enter it in the system, we manage the status of the opportunities, we create proposals, scopes of work. They can be basic or they can be complex bill of materials for larger construction or fire projects. Integrated e-signing, so e-signing throughout that process within the Fieldhub platform. And then the project and process management that comes along with that, workflow management, status and reporting, the system and inspection tracking, scheduling and dispatching, a field technician mobile application. So keeping the technicians in sync with the office to where they are, they can see their schedule, they can see as-built and documents that have been stored about projects and systems, and we'll go through that. The full warehouse inventory management for multiple warehouses, tracking inventory and vehicles, the movements of that material. Everything built on a GL, a general ledger accounting system with full AP, AR, bank rec, check printing. So one of the unique features of Fieldhub to a lot of other options in the industry is it is fully replaces your accounting, your field service, your inventory, your recurring billing, everything with an optimized platform for our industry, for a security or fire installer. Optimized recurring revenue billing, which we'll talk about, the reporting and dashboards associated with it, and then a customer portal. So the fully integrated GL, I think, is a really important aspect and feature of Fieldhub. It's a huge lift and investment on our part to do that right. It eliminates multiple applications, siloed data. It creates a lot of efficiencies around data entry. Anybody who's synchronized multiple products together knows that when it works, and sometimes it doesn't. And that can cause interruptions, it can cause data that isn't quite right. And so having the account data be the account data, everything structured properly and tracking that data throughout the process. And then the job costing visibility is really important to have an integrated GL. To have really good job costing, have all of that line up with our P&L and chart of accounts. So this is just an example of a dashboard in Fieldhub where I might log in, I can see backlog, active work orders, see the backlog, both in terms of installation revenue and RMR revenue. So RMR that has been sold but not yet turned on, we're going to bring RMR front and center for managers to be able to see what their RMR is, what they've added quarter to date, year to date. Here we have a user that has opportunity tracking. So we've created opportunities. We're tracking next action dates as a salesperson. We are creating bill of materials, proposals, and scopes of work, and then a number of dashboards in the system. So this red dot is my reminder to jump into a live demo here. So I just switched my browser tab over to a live demo. Fieldhub is built for the web, so you can access it through a web browser. It's optimized for Chrome, but I've used it in a number of different web browsers successfully. And here I have some information about the account, the payment terms. I can see that this account that we're going to be working on and doing a proposal today has $65 of existing recurring. I'm going to make this a bit bigger in the browser. So this is a little larger than I might use day to day, but for the purposes of a presentation, I'll just make it a little larger. We can see deposits, lifetime revenue, AR history, open AR, some flagged notes. So we've added some notes in the system and flagged, so it surfaces up at the account level. and then any active projects or work orders. Our contacts are contact roles. These are configurable, so you can define roles that meet your requirements. And a contact can have a relationship to multiple accounts. So a single contact might be associated with, if it's a property manager, they might be associated with a dozen accounts, a couple dozen sites. So all of that can be managed within the system. Of course, one account may have many sites. And here we're going to come back later to systems, work orders, recurring, and such. But for now, what we're going to do is create a proposal. So we're going to create an access control proposal here. Of course, lead sources are configurable. You have a default proposal template, but I'll just paste in something else here. We'll kick off a workflow, so an opportunity or a proposal workflow. We'll save this and add the scope. And so we have a proposal we just created, or an opportunity. Now we're creating the first scope of work, and in this case, it's going to be the access control system. We choose what site this is for. If we were adding to an existing system, we could choose that system, but in this case, we're creating a new system. Some information about the pricing model and an overview. So we'll just go ahead and start adding to the scope of work. So now here we have a bill of materials. It's blank. Most of the time, we're going to start by just pulling in a scope template. So I can just start typing. As a company, we would build out a whole variety of scope templates that represent our standard product offerings. Here we've brought in the scope for an access control system. It brings in the inventory material, non-inventory, labor, and recurring. From here, we can just simply drag and drop to move things around and reorganize them if appropriate. And make edits, add related material, change pricing or we can just change it, say this is going to be a markup-based pricing. Do we want to show the customer all the details of this grouping? We can show line-by-line details with pricing. We can show aggregate details, or we can show none of the details at all. So we'll track the details line by line, but the customer on the proposal and on the invoice is only going to see a summary of this. They're not going to see any of those details. So saving this information, you can see it's going to bring in photos, data sheets, brochures. It's going to give us a grouping by grouping and a total margin estimate for this project. We now have our proposal that has one scope of work. We will add another scope of work, and this time I'll just add a scope manually. So I can just type to search for an item, bring in the inventory item I like. I can add related items here, and it'll just grab all of the related items that have been pre-configured in Fieldhub by your team. Add some labor. And some recurring. So you can see here we're not using a group. Groups are optional, but I can very easily add a group, reorganize it, call this the intercom system, add a, maybe they don't ask for card access at the loading dock door, but we're going to include it anyway. And at this point, I will add a inventory part. Rather than searching, I can just browse our tree of information, go into a particular part, add an item, add the related items here, and I can make this optional. So if the customer didn't ask for this, we can set it up as an optional grouping, in which case it'll be presented to the customer as a price range. We'll present them the total price without the optional packages and a price range and a high-end price with the optional packages, so that if we're adding something that they did not spec out, we can include it and present it to the customer without pricing ourselves out. We can say, well, now this project has a price range. If there was recurring in an optional grouping, it would show a recurring price range and a margin range. So all of that is presented here. We can prepare an e-sign agreement. So at this point, we'll do a 1 or 2 signer agreement, either one. We'll add our e-sign package. We can add a PDF agreement to this, and then we can add the proposal to this. So it's building out this e-sign package. We do work with a third party for the e-signatures, although it is all done through Fieldhub. So we'll create that e-sign package. We can, at this point, send it directly to the customer to sign, or we can publish it to the portal. And so in this example, I'm just going to publish it to the portal because we haven't actually sent the proposal to the customer yet. And when we're ready to send the proposal to the customer, we can invite them here. At this point, we can just click send. If it's a property manager who is expecting this and I work with on a regular basis, I might just click send. Alternatively, we can copy a link, send it to the customer. When the customer receives it, it's going to automatically log them into the customer portal so long as that tokenized link hasn't expired. Once they can see here that they can drill into the details of the various packages that we prepared for them. We can see here that on the pre-wire phase, we chose to not show any details, although we chose to show line-by-line details without pricing on this group, line-by-line details with pricing on this group. So all of that will automatically come in here. And then assumptions, if we've added a electric strike that might require cutting a door frame, we can automatically bring in the assumptions from this particular from that particular material. And then you can see here that we had published the acceptance package, the e-sign document. So we can simply click accept. It'll take us directly into the e-sign package with any of the documents that we've attached, and then allow us to start the e-sign process. So returning to our management interface, we can see the invitation that was sent out. We can see if it's been accessed, how often it's been accessed. We can configure Fieldhub to notify you when it is accessed. So that's an option as well. We now have our scopes of work, proposal, e-sign. Let's say that the e-sign is completed and signed off on. At this point, we can receive a deposit. We can convert them one or multiple projects to a work order. So in this case, we'll just go ahead and convert the access project. We'll leave that off of it for now. We'll choose one or multiple scopes of work here. So we have an installation scope, access control credential scope of work, and a low voltage permit. We can choose the workflows that we want to kick off as a part of this. Choose a contract that we want to associate it with, who's the primary contact, and we will convert this. So we've now created a work order, and in Fieldhub, whether it's a service call, a test and inspect, an installation, it is a work order, but you can define and configure as many work order types as you like. Work order types flow down to the general ledger for financial reporting, which allows us to do a P&L by install, test and inspect, service, monitoring, however you want to structure that. And then all of the bill of materials that we had on that proposal are now brought over as a scope of work for the installation. We have the original quantities, which were what were brought over from the proposal, any revisions, so if there are any changes to the scope of work since the time of the converting it from a proposal, what's been purchased, staged, installed, invoiced. So all of this is being tracked at this point throughout that process. So let's switch back to the deck here. So we have dashboards. We're going to come back to a live demo, and certainly if there are any questions that come up, I can jump into the live demo again. We have a number of dashboards throughout the system. This is an example of a sales dashboard. Here we have that work order. We were just on the work order. You can recognize we have this material, the details, the scope. We can also see how much time we've spent on this project. So the original estimate and then the actual work time, travel time, total paid time, a summary of the job costing information, and we can click into a detail of the job costing information. So here, the original estimate, this is going to lock off of the original proposal. The revision, this would include any changes or estimated overages, where we are currently to date and what's remaining. The cost structure could have virtually unlimited categories, so it's flexible in how it can be represented. If you want to have a site prep section, a permitting section, we can sales commission, we can track this at the job costing level. If we are doing WIP or deferred revenue, we'll see that accumulate in real time, and WIP and deferred revenue is configurable on a work order type basis. Everything here is built off of the general ledger, the labor using standard rate labor costs, the inventory material. Other expenses would reflect a general ledger level allocation. So if there were overhead allocations or vehicle allocations, anything like that, it would be reflected in the other expenses. So Fieldhub is a full dispatch system. So it allows us to filter the work orders and the technicians based on the type of project. If we want to filter installation versus service versus test and inspect, we can build out those filters, or by office, location, and such. Based on this filter, we'll see a set of work orders. We can drag and drop to build out those work orders. We can also see in real time the status of these projects. So the icon here indicates that the technician is checked into the site and is currently working. This icon of the vehicle indicates that the technician is traveling to the job site. This is going to be flagged, indicating that the technician has not checked into this job or may be checked into a different job. And then we can see any breaks. This is, while it's a web browser, it is all updated in real time. So if my colleague is in the other room and they're dragging and dropping, building out a schedule, when they drop that onto the schedule, I will see it update in real time without having to update the web page. It's using Sockets technology. Same thing, if a technician checks into a job and I'm sitting here looking at this, I'll see this immediately change without having to refresh the page. When we converted the proposal into work orders, we kicked off a number of workflows. There was an installation workflow, access control, credential workflow, and a low voltage permitting workflow. So we kicked all of those off. Those workflows are on the project, they're on the account level, so we can look at an account and see all of the active permits that are that are in progress for a particular account. We also have this, we have a number of ways of viewing those workflows. This is kind of a Kanban style dashboard view, where in this example, we have a low voltage permitting workflow. So we can see all of the phases. These workflows are totally configurable by you. So if you have a workflow you want to create for something totally different that's unique to you, or you want to adjust the low voltage permitting workflow, the phases, you can do that. Each of these phases may have required or optional checklists associated with them. They might have a default assignee. So the assignee will receive a notification. So when we converted that access control project, the person responsible for permitting was notified by email. The person responsible for the next step in that installation was notified by email that they had a new workflow. And then the person who's responsible for provisioning the access control credentials, just as an example, was also notified. And you can add that flow later in the process, but It handles those notifications. I can say that when a permit is approved, I want it to automatically notify Don. We can click on these. We can see where this particular project is in the workflow. We can see the required and optional checklist items. We can see anybody who's following this flow. So if you're maybe not the project manager, but you're the executive responsible for this account, you can follow this flow and you will receive an email notification whenever it's updated or it moves to another phase or somebody completes a component of that flow. I talked about inventory management at the beginning. Warehouse and inventory management is really critical to get accurate job costing. It's it's a lot of work no matter how good the software. So we've really invested in streamlining the process and making it as and lifting the workload off of the team as much as possible. We have a full life cycle for inventory management that can start with material being requested. Material can be requested by a project manager on their laptop or a desktop. Material can actually be requested by a technician in the field using the mobile application, which we'll touch on in a moment. The request comes in, it's going to notify whoever's responsible for purchasing or for preparing material. The warehouse then, from that request, they can create purchase orders. They can see what inventory they have. They can pull from inventory, purchase and receive material. They then stage the material. When material is staged, we generate a label with a unique barcode for that staged material. And this allows the technician to come in using the Fieldhub mobile application. They can just scan the label that's on that bin. And it's going to say, well, here are the 12 items that are in this bin or on this pallet or in multiple bins. They can then receive that material. They now have custody of that material. So there is chain of custody of the material throughout the process. And they would install the material using the application. So management can see for a project line by line what material has been requested, what's been purchased or is in stock, what has been staged, which of the material the technician is in possession of. And then if the tech is in possession, they can see what material was installed in near real time. So when the technician checks out of that job, when they're leaving the job site, that will create those installation records so we can see that the material was installed. So we have the full process from requesting, purchasing, receiving material to installing. There's chain of custody throughout the process. Excuse me, Fieldhub can, generally we use FIFO-based, first in, first out based accounting, but you can also bypass FIFO and direct expense it. So if we have some Avigilon cameras on the shelf, we paid $1,000 a piece for them, but this is a registered project, so we have discounted pricing. We're going to order that same camera part number, but we can bypass those cameras on the shelf, receive those cameras directly to the job, and receive those discounted prices directly to the job for accurate job costing. And then barcode tracking and item reorder levels, so a lot of the typical functions that you would find in an accounting system. So I'm going to talk about the mobile application. The mobile application is for the field technicians. It is a natively compiled application. It's available on iOS and Android. It's optimized for mobile, also works on tablets. Because it's a locally compiled application, it works offline. So if technicians move in and out of data service, they can continue to do all of the required and most of the functions of the application. They can check in and out of jobs, see their schedule, install material, take photos of the work they're doing, get customer sign-offs, all of that, even if they're offline. They have access to project details, including as-built, PDFs, any documents which the sales team or project management team has uploaded to the site or systems, they have access to. Access to this data is one of the few features that does require data service. So if they are completely offline, they might not have full access to this. We're tracking time using the mobile application. That time is feeding both job costing and payroll. We're tracking the movements of material from the time the technician uses the mobile app to pick up material in the warehouse to the time they install it on the job site. Importantly, if the technician never installs that material, that is going to be flagged. We're going to see that when we close out that job, we're going to see that that material was staged and picked up by the technician, but it was never installed. The other thing is we're going to expense that camera to WIP at the time of installation. So if it is not installed, we will not expense it. We can capture checklists and sign-offs, and the technician, if it's using an integrated central station, they can see central station details, place a system on and off test through the mobile application. So some examples of some of the screens in the iOS application. Here, the technician can see their schedule, who they're working with. They can preview the work to be done. These icons, who they're working with. They can click to call, click to navigate. They check into travel, check into the job site, check in and out of breaks. So again, this is job costing, but it's also payroll. So Fieldhub is going to generate a payroll export file that that goes into your payroll provider, so they won't need to track their time in a separate application. They can see details of the project, the customer contacts, all the notes that have previously been tracked, any site details. So site details would include central station, previous work projects that have been completed, previous notes. So here they can see the central station details, the inspection history and details, capture photos of their work, capture photos and notes through the mobile application. And they can do this, again, it's an actual mobile application. It's not a web app. So they can take photos from the camera on their phone. They can attach photos from their photo library. They can attach a dozen photos at once. So we want to make that very easy. I think I certainly found operating Urban Alarm that a picture is truly worth 1,000 words. And then record the installation of material. So a technician can install material that is on the bill of materials. They can also add to the scope. So if they're installing something maybe from truck stock that they do not have permission to, that is not on the bill of materials from the truck stock, they can add it to the scope and install it. If it's a service visit, they're replacing a power supply, they can add that to the scope. That will handle the inventory movement, and it'll also add it to the bill of materials for invoicing. Checklists are totally configurable. They're basic though, yes, no questions, text questions, photos, and a customer signature. So this is just an example of a training checklist, which was something that I often used at Urban Alarm. And then, of course, all of the information that the technicians capture in the mobile application flows back into the web interface. So here, this is a work log. So you saw before we have work orders, and then a technician creates a work log every time they check in and out of a job. In addition to time stamping everything they do, we're also geo-stamping everything. So we can see where were they when they checked in, when they checked out. If we see a checkout at 9 p.m. in the evening, we can pull this up and say, well, where were they? And maybe they were at ADI and it all makes sense. Or maybe we have to have a conversation with that technician. Okay, here's my red dot telling me that I'm going to jump over into a live demo here. Okay, let's see. Okay, so we're going to look at the site information. Now, the site is a very critical component of everything we're doing here. From a site, and here you can see we're looking at the address. We have, so we have the systems, the work orders, we have a media gallery. So this is going to show us all of the photographs that any of the technicians have captured from this job site since we've been there, along with any notes. So it's a great place to kind of go back and scroll back in time to see the walls open, the wiring, see everything that was done in real time. We can filter it, but it's a great place to start. And we can also see the account history. So this is important and one of the, one of those frustrations that I had that kind of filled the bucket of why we wanted to build Fieldhub is that we have an account. That account has multiple sites, but that site has a life cycle, and it might originally have been associated with a builder. We do all of this work, we capture photos, we install material, we track systems for that builder, and then at some point along the way, we want to share it, and we can share the site with an additional account. In this case, this site is associated with these two accounts. Now it's with the property owner, and we might be completing a scope of work for the builder, but the property owner adds an additional scope. They want to do a guest entry system, or they want to add a camera system. And so now we want to track information to one project, one site, but it is going to multiple different customers. And then at some point along the way, we can archive a relationship. So I can go and I can say, okay, this account is no longer associated with this site. On my account history, I can see all of the previous accounts that were associated with this site. When I go to this account and I look at sites, I can see all of the previous sites associated with this builder, for instance, or property manager. So it allows us to track it. It allows us to transfer a site from one account to another with an effective date, so that there is an effective date at which the recurring billing responsibility changes. So I've built out the site with a little bit of information here. We have some locations. So we just kind of built out some, multiple floors, lobby locations, of course, documents. We can choose whether these documents, as we add them to a site, whether they are displayed on the customer portal. So the same customer portal where they went to access the proposal, where they'll go to access invoices, I can just say, well, these are as-built. I want to share these documents with the customer through the customer portal. I can also choose whether or not the technician has access to these documents through the mobile application. We're going to go into systems here. We have this existing fire system. You can see that we've got some notes associated with it. We have this red flag note. That means that when the technician checks into a site, if it has a flag note, it's going to pop up and say, hey, check in at the guard gate before entering the property. So it'll kind of push that note to the technician. From here, we have, we'll add a central station. We can, of course, track information from just generic central stations, but if it's an integration that we have, and currently we have integrations with Affiliated, Avant-Garde, and Rapid Response. So here, I will add this account. It is pulling in information from Fieldhub, and it is also pulling in information from, in this case, Avant-Garde. So the address information is populating from Fieldhub. The account types is from Avant-Garde. The XMIT number is the next receiver ID available for me to use. And then this information is directly from Avant-Garde. So we're not storing this information. We are configuring it within the central station. So here we built out that account. We can place a system on and off test, add phone numbers, email addresses, go into details, add zones, areas. So a lot of the information that you can do from within Avant-Garde, you can do within Fieldhub. We can activate this account. So now the account is active. We can place a system on and off test. Again, this is just pulling details from directly from Avant-Garde. Okay, let me go ahead and switch back here. Oh, I'm sorry. I also want to create an inspection record here. So let's do that. We'll go back to our system here. Okay, so you saw we created the central station. We can see the details of that central station. We can add more central stations if maybe this is a panel that's being migrated. It's a takeover, so we're migrating it from a previous central over to ours. We can track all of that information here. We can set up inspection or maintenance tracking. So we're not doing the inspection in Fieldhub, but we are tracking all the information. We'll do fire annual. We can select the type, the frequency. So when it was originally done, if it was, the most recent date, if we want to track that. And the primary contact. So here we can simply track the information and it'll show up on a report where we can say, well, show us all the NFPA inspections that are due next month, and it'll show us. But we can also take a step further and we can auto-generate a work order. So here we can auto-generate a fire test and inspect work order. We can add some notes. We can choose an existing scope template. So we used a scope template previously when we created a proposal. We chose an a 6-door access control system as a scope, but we can create a scope template, a global scope template for a test and inspect. And then when we auto-generate this work order, we can pre-populate that scope template. We can kick off a workflow. So again, this is how somebody could receive a notification. We'll just do do we have a fire? So of course we could configure a fire test and inspect. Here I'll just do a service call workflow. So it'll notify service that there's a new work order that needs to be scheduled. And then the number of days in advance we want to create this in advance of the due date. And is this going to be billable, or is this part of a service plan or a contract? So now our system has central station information, inspection, maintenance schedules. You can create multiple maintenance. If you're doing a quarterly and annual, we can set all of that up and it'll auto-generate those work orders. And there, I think that's, we're ready to switch back here. Okay. Device list, we didn't really get into this, but we can track the whole device lists. It's going to be device type specific in terms of what data is tracked. If it's an IP device, we're going to capture MAC address, IP address, username, password, everything else. I'm going to skip over this. This is the central station setup that we just did. Okay, so now we're back at our work order. I'm going to go a little faster here because I know we're coming up on time. I want to make sure we have 10 minutes for questions. So we're back at our work order. We've kind of done the installation. Again, there's a lot of reporting and tracking that we didn't touch on, but the next step is we want to go to invoice it. We're going to review the invoicing. I'm going to drop in here to setting up the recurring. So here we have a recurring line item associated with this work order. And we also have an existing billing group. So we can see that we're already billing this customer quarterly, the next bill date, some kind of profile information about how this is being billed. We can drag and drop and add this to this group. It's going to say, hey, you're adding recurring that has a start date that is 8 days before the next cycle invoice date. What do you want to do with these 8 days? And Fieldhub will automatically handle the proration. You can just bill the prorated amount now, which is perfect if this is an installation invoice. If we're just adding recurring, we can just add it, the prorated amount to the next billing cycle, and it will bill for those 8 days plus, of course, the renewal on that next billing cycle. This generates the invoice. We can see that the invoice is automatically sent by email. By default, it's sent as a link to the portal so that we can track when the customer gets it, if they got it. There's some edit functions we still have after we've sent the invoice. We can, of course, apply a payment. So if we have ACH or credit card, we can just click, say, apply payment using ACH, and then 2 more clicks and that payment is charged and applied to the invoice. We have collection sequences. So a collection sequence can be set as a default for an account. And then you can also override that on a per invoice basis. So a typical collection sequence might be that when an invoice is generated either manually by accounting or operations or automatically with recurring billing, excuse me, Fieldhub will email a link to that invoice. If the customer doesn't open it, since it's a link to the portal, we know if they don't open it, we can then email a reminder and even generate a paper-based invoice after a certain period of time. Same thing with statements. They can automatically be sent. Statements, or rather invoices, can be generated as a batch file to your office for printing or to a third party who will print and fold and mail. We can choose to attach a PDF by default. So if this particular account is using a bill.com or they have to have a PDF attachment, then we would choose a collection sequence, a default collection sequence for this account that has that that has a PDF attachment, or can go straight to hard copy. When the customer receives a link to the invoice, they click on it, it automatically logs them back into the portal, takes them directly to that invoice. From here, they can pay with a card or ACH on file, or they can download it as a PDF, retrieve a PDF of the invoice, which is going to have line-by-line details. Again, it's going to show the same level of detail that you specified on the proposal. So if you said not to show line-by-line detail, then the invoice is not going to show, the proposal and the invoice is not going to show that line-by-line detail. On the recurring side, we're going to show the proration period. So if there's a prorated period, it's going to say this line item is for this date to this date, 35 per month. It's just one day, so there's the total, but it's going to break down exactly the date range that it's associated with to be very explicit. The RMR, the recurring revenue management, of course, this is a really key function for what we're doing here with a kind of industry-specific software. It allows for proration. So if you're doing mid-cycle billing, or maybe we're invoicing for cloud cameras or access control annually, and then mid-year we add a door or add a camera, we can bill that prorated amount, and then it'll cycle bill on the next cycle. It'll just roll into the next cycle billing. Flexible billing schedules. So since Fieldhub, the recurring invoicing, the invoicing is automated, the payment application is automated, the notifications are automated. Most of our customers who start in Fieldhub, they'll just cycle bill every day of the month, because if the service starts on the 17th, then the customer will be invoiced on the 17th of every month. A lot of our customers who come over from a different platform, they're maybe used to cycle billing every month on the 1st. Fieldhub can support that as well. You can set a default cycle bill date, in which case every invoice will happen on the 1st of the month. The automated payment charging ACH and credit cards, the application of those payments, we do support multiple gateways. So right now, Fiserv and Forte are our primary gateways. They both offer competitive pricing, and you can get pricing from both. All of that automation means that nobody touches anything. Nobody even has to log into Fieldhub. Fieldhub is invoicing, charging cards, applying payments, notifying customers, sending out collection emails, sending out statements, sending electronic invoices, PDFs or emails, statements, and then paper invoices and statements through your office or through a third party. So all of that can be totally automated. The deferred revenue recognition is automated. So if we're billing them annually, Fieldhub is going to generate, and we're billing them $1,200 a year, Fieldhub is going to recognize that $100 in January, defer $1,100, and then every month it's going to recognize another $100, and that's automated as well. Change management and tracking and reporting. So we can track on change history. We can schedule RMR changes into the future. This is just what an RMR record looks like, where we have all the detail. We have the, this is just zooming in here, we can see changes in the past, reason, who did them. We can schedule changes in the future. Of course, comprehensive reporting. We have reports covering kind of all aspects of the business. I'm going to highlight these that are around financial reporting. So Fieldhub, again, it is the accounting system for your operation. It's fully integrated. So bank reconciliation, AP reports, AR reports, P&L statements, generating an income or profit and loss statement by a work order, or by a business unit, or by service versus install versus test and inspect is all supported. Balance sheet, cash flow, taxing, trial balance. Other kind of more ad hoc reporting or dashboard reporting is supported in Fieldhub. We have some turnkey dashboards that are available. It is at an added cost in some cases, or in most cases. Some of it's limited to our enterprise plan, and we're happy to provide detailed pricing on request. I'll provide a summary of pricing in a moment. So at our enterprise level, there's kind of report writing, having access to our to your data directly. Also supported through an API, direct access to your data through ODBC. The API is fully documented, and we support you in that process. So our implementation process, we start with a pilot, at the sandbox pilot. We want to make sure that Fieldhub is the right fit. If you go through that and you say, yep, this is good, thumbs up, we move into this to the migration, training, implementation, and that's generally a 90-day process, and then a go live from there. If we're migrating data from your existing software, this is available for a number of the industry-specific platforms, and we can have a conversation, but we can do imports of a lot of the data that's in an existing system, including accounts, site history, recurring billing. If you have vaulted credit card tokens at Forte, we can move those over. It's a very streamlined process. So there's a lot of data that we can bring over from your existing system. We're generally not going to bring over financial history, but the GL history, but you will have the customer history, the service history, the job history, all of that. So I mentioned the sandbox pilot. This is an important aspect of how we approach business. We want it to be a collaboration, which means that we want to make sure before you make a commitment that you're very clear on what Fieldhub does, what it offers, and we make sure it's a good fit. So the sandbox, we charge $495 for a 30-day pilot. You work with a project manager, and it allows us to really collaborate in the evaluation. We are not going to be trying to convince you that Fieldhub is the right fit for you in the pilot. We are going to collaborate and say, okay, what are your needs? Let's have honest conversations about how Fieldhub addresses those. We want to make sure that we're going to be providing you some training and support throughout that process. And then we just want to provide you all the information needed to make a confident and clear decision so that you are not surprised when you go live on Fieldhub. Once you move forward with the implementation process, it is very much a kind of a white glove, hands-on process where our implementation team spends time with you doing planning, preparation, understanding your business and how that's going to map onto Fieldhub, and planning that process, doing the data transformation, configuration management. So we're not just handing over an environment and wishing you luck. We are going to be working with you on your chart of accounts. How does that map onto Fieldhub? We're going to be doing all of that initial configuration for you and with you. And then training your team in separate trainings for operations, inventory management, accounting, sales. So role-based training. We can provide full details on the pricing on request, but just generally, we do charge for the pilot, $495 for a 30-day pilot. It can be extended for an additional fee. If you don't move forward, that's the extent of the commitment. If you do move forward, we credit the pilot fee towards the implementation. Data import and migration can range. A simple spreadsheet import is $2,500, and then most of the migrations from legacy systems are in the kind of $5,000 to $7,000 range. So for implementation, this is a typical range. And then the ongoing, for our standard pricing, we do have an enterprise, which is generally for companies with a couple hundred people or more, or doing $40,000, $50,000 a month, 40 or 50,000 recurring invoices per month. So most of our customers, the monthly for a full user has access to the web and mobile, is $65 per user per month. And if it's mobile only, it's going to be $35 per user per month with a monthly minimum for those user fees. And there are some other possible fees. Again, our process during the pilot sales implementation process is really focused on successful outcomes. We would much rather not move forward or not get a contract, not get a dime, than have an unsuccessful outcome. So our customer feedback reflects that. We will be at ISC West. Here's our booth number. We'll be in the emerging tech over here towards the kind of right side of the floor. And then we welcome you to set up a one-on-one meeting at ISC West. You can use this link or this QR code. If you're not going to be at ISC West, then you can use this this QR code or link to set up a one-on-one Zoom demo. And this is fieldhub.link/demo or /ISC. Ken.
Thank you, Miles. Great, informative presentation. Before I start asking the questions, let me tell you this. I generally only hear about complaints. Nobody ever calls me and says, wow, this is great. So I can tell you that no complaints about Fieldhub. So Miles must be doing something very right, okay? Here's the questions. We only have a couple of minutes, so no lengthy answers. Can you add folders within the mobile app for pictures from a location? Can you add folders in the web app? The idea is to allow nested capture of data for sites, especially over time.
You cannot add folders. However, you can organize all the photos by site and by work order.
Can a technician in the field be required to complete a checklist?
Yes. So you can set up a checklist like a customer training checklist and say that any residential install cannot be marked as complete by the technician until they've completed that training checklist. That can be set on the work order type level or on an individual work order by dispatch or by project management, yes.
Can we add emails to an account?
Yes, you can. So every account has an email address associated with it. So I can see here, there's a little email checkbox. I can copy this and that will copy a unique email address for this account. And I can CC or BCC my emails in Outlook or Google, and they'll all show up here under an activity log for that account. So yes.
Here's someone interested in accounting migration from QuickBooks. I guess can do it.
So from QuickBooks, QuickBooks doesn't really have it has memorized transactions, but it doesn't have a true concept of recurring monthly revenue. A memorized transaction, QuickBooks doesn't know, is that monthly, is it annual, is it quarterly? So that would be a spreadsheet migration. And we would provide spreadsheet templates and work with you. You could propagate those spreadsheets and then we would do that import. That's generally how we would approach QuickBooks because of those limitations in QuickBooks.
What are the fees for credit card and ACH?
They are competitive. I don't know them off the top of my head. They're around 2.8% for credit card. ACH I think is around 40 or 50 cents per transaction, and we can provide that. And it is something that you can negotiate directly with the merchant provider.
Do you have only one merchant provider you deal with, or can they use whoever they want?
You can't use whoever, but we do support Forte, which a lot of the folks migrating over are already on Forte, so it's a very smooth migration. And we also support Fiserv, which is one of the top tier processors, so you can definitely get competitive bids. Okay.
Does it support API integration from distributors for item pricing updates?
We do not natively support that. We work very closely with Blackleaf Solutions, and they do support that, and they're able to provide updates from ADI and a number of other distributors and manufacturers. They're able to update Fieldhub through our API.
Can you migrate a DICE system?
Yes, we have recently completed a major DICE migration with a Net1 company, and we feel confident in our ability to do that.
Okay, that was the last question. Well,
okay, well, thank you very much.
Wait, don't go away. Would I need to add a sales program like WeSuite to use with your system?
Absolutely. So WeSuite has an integration with us. You can build your proposals in WeSuite and then and use all of the WeSuite functionality, and then you can transmit those proposals into a Fieldhub opportunity through the API.
Last call. Anybody else have a question? Now's your shot. Otherwise, please contact Miles. Be sure, if you're at ISC, make sure you go see him. Tell him you saw him on this webinar. I think Miles might be the fellow that contacted me first and said, how about some webinars?
I did. I
Did we
did 2 years ago.
contact you? Yes, go contact Miles directly. Okay, there we go. We got someone's going to contact you, I'm sure.
Okay.
Looks like we've reached the end of our time here, folks. I want to thank everybody, especially Miles, for the presentation. Make sure you go see him at ISC, and if you sign up with him, make him buy you dinner or something, lunch, whatever. A lot of pressure on him, but I know he can handle it.
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate that.
We'll see you next time, and thanks again.
Thank you. Take care.